I'm Garrett Glaser. I'm a furniture maker and a furniture designer here in the Twin Cities. I'm part of a group called Guerilla By Design, which is a very loose affiliation of people like me, people who make and design furniture. We get together and we put shows of our work together to get it out there, and then we work also as kind of a support group for each other because it's kind of a cold, hard world out there. But we have one of the rooms in the gallery right now. We put all the pieces together for that, and so you can come check. You can check some of that out later. But I wanted to come here today to talk a little bit about why you might want to have an actual human being that you can meet and talk to, build you a piece of furniture for your house, why that's a good thing, and what that process is like a little bit. This slideshow is completely tangential to everything I'm saying. It's just pretty things to look at. These are, almost all these are projects by Guerilla By Design members. And it's I just want to kind of have there be a range so you can see what the possibilities are of what's out there. A little bit about why I think it's actually a very important thing to have somebody build you something. And it's not because of some super idealistic, let's go back to the barter system, you give me a pig and I'll build you a table kind of idea, but really more practically because there's times where you need a piece that fits into a certain space or fulfills a certain need, and you just can't find it in a catalog or in a store. And if you did, it's would maybe be a half measure and it wouldn't be exactly what you need. And there's no reason not to have the exact, perfect, beautiful piece that you need at any time, and that's where it's good to have somebody that you can talk to that can hear what you're looking for and what you need and can just create that for you. And in a kind of broader way, I think that the pieces that you have, especially the kind of keystone pieces that you have in your house or in your life, they tell a story about you. Where you got it, how it, where it came from, and the story can be fiction or it can be fact. I mean, restoration hardware, which I love. The restoration hardware catalog. It's beautiful. I love to look at it. They're beautiful objects and they're photographed in. It's like a lovely fantasy. But every time I see those pieces in real life, and it might just be because I'm hypercritical because it's what I do all the time. But I see the marks of the fiction that like say it's a oak farm table that in the catalog is made from reclaimed English oak. And restoration hardware makes a lot of tables. And there's just not that much perfectly patinaed reclaimed oak floating around England for them to snatch up and make amazing farm tables out of. So if you look at it, you'll see one of the really telltale things is you'll see they'll have all these little wormholes or nail holes on the table, and they'll be in these little constellations of 3 or 5 dots, and it's because they have a guy who has a board with some nails in it, and he's just whacking that table every once in a while, and he's doing it pretty randomly, but you can't, maybe he has 3 different sets of nail boards that he hits, so it's not all the same constellation. So they have that guy, and then they have another guy who has an angle grinder who's taking off the corners and making it look like people have rubbed it with their hands for 400 years. And then there's another guy who has a blowtorch and a wire brush, and he's making the grain come out in one spot. And then there's another guy with a bucket of bleach, and he's bleaching that table so that it has that perfect gray driftwood look to it. And they do a really good job. They're high quality pieces, but it's not a real story. I mean, if you have somebody here build you a table out of, it could be made out of barn wood that came from a decrepit barn that was pulled down in western Wisconsin. Or there's Wood from the Hood is a company here in town that, when there's storm damaged trees or when there's a new construction and they have to pull down trees, they'll go in and they'll pull the trees on the property down, and they'll turn it into sometimes really beautiful lumber that you can have things built for, and they keep track of where that came from. So you might, have a sideboard that the exact address that tree came from, and that becomes part of the story of that piece. Or I've even built doors out of. They used to have a mill plank road down by where the new Guthrie is, and it was it was a nod to older times, and it was literally a wooden road that was apparently a terrible idea because in the winter all the bolts would pop up and people's tires would pop, but they had these oak planks down for like 15 years with cars driving over it, going through winters and getting salt and sand and dirt just smushed into there, and you can't fake a patina like that. You just can't. That's not something you can make. They're amazing looking wood. And that's the kind of thing that can be available to you when you're actually working with somebody who wants to know what you want and is trying to make it work. And even if you're not, those are all reclaimed things, and so the materials themselves have a story. But just the very act of asking somebody to make something for you is a story in itself. There's never been a time where I've made something for somebody and it was not a collaboration in some part. So about half of these are working? That's good. It's all right. So the conversations that go into designing a piece for somebody, so much of what that piece is coming from the client. It's never in a vacuum. So as opposed to just picking something out of a catalog and having it show up on your door, that piece becomes part of your life because that's it's kind of a brave act to trust somebody to make something for you. And so that's the very kind of, I don't know, I feel very passionate about that aspect of furniture making. And there's a lot of other things. Having somebody, talking about the reclaimed wood, and even if you have, virgin wood that you're using, it's just much more sustainable than giant factory processes with who knows what kind of finishes on it. You can talk to the person about where that wood is coming from. If it's coming from a sustainable place, if that's important to you, you don't have to, and it's less disposable. When you put that effort into having something made for you, there's just a lot less chance that if it gets a little chip on it, you're going to put it out on the curb with a free sign. It's something that's important to you, and then hopefully it becomes important to all the other people in your life, and people fight over it after you're gone. And so the hardest, I think, part, because it is kind of a daunting proposition to find somebody, tell them what you want, give them money, and have them make you something. I think the hardest part is knowing where to start. You can't just open up your Yellow Pages, not that any of you have Yellow Pages anymore, but you can't just, if you type in furniture maker Minneapolis in Google, you don't get what you're looking for. And so it's a good idea. There's a lot of resources that don't take a lot of effort to find. Galleries are great. Rachel here, there's a show out there that has a bunch of pieces made by a bunch of different people, and you can go and you can see the different styles that everybody's working in, and you can hone in. You can, I really like this piece. I need something for my house like that. I'm gonna get this guy's card and give them a call. There's a website called mnartist.org that has a lot of people like me and a lot of fine artists as well, but there are a lot of furniture makers on there, and you can just search through and look at images of people's work. There's also a website called Custom Made, which is like a world unto itself, but its whole purpose is to make the process of finding somebody to make something for you simple. You go on there and you say what you're looking for, and you can even say what your price range is, and then all the people who make things on that website fight over you. they all send you pictures of things of what they want you to make for you. And so, that way, they're just basically coming to you, and you don't have to do that legwork.
What website was it in?
It's called custommade.com, and I say it's a world unto itself. Because they're worried about making sure that everybody's happy, they're very controlled about how you communicate on it. So once you enter into a contract through Custom Made, you're kind of locked into that, and they want a lot of your communications to be through their website, so that if there's ever an issue, a legal issue, if something goes horribly awry, they have a record of how everything went down, and they can arbitrate that. But it is a really good way to find people. And when you do find somebody, you find somebody, you send them an email, tell them kind of what you're looking for, and then you set up a first meeting with them. That first meeting is critical. It's gonna be, when you leave that meeting, you're gonna know whether you feel good about working with this person or not. Let me step back a little bit. There's kind of a spectrum of both furniture makers and furniture buying clients, and I think the spectrums are kind of analogous. On one end of the spectrum, you'll have, as far as clients, you'll have people who walk in knowing exactly what they want. They have maybe designed it and built it in their head already. They know what size it is. They know what the materials they want. They know what stain color they want. They have picked out the hardware. Everything. They know what they want, but they can't physically build it themselves. So they're looking for somebody who can just be their arms, or it's somebody who's found something in an ancient issue of Architectural Digest, and it's a piece that they love, but there's no way they could find it now. And so they bring a piece, and this is what I want. This is exactly what I want. Try and make this for me. And then on the other end of the spectrum is people who, not that they have no idea what they want, they have a need, and they don't know how to get that filled. They have a space in a room that isn't quite working, or they have a function that they need. It's like, I have this strange corner of my room, and I want there to be an entertainment center, but I need the TV to be able to flip out so I can watch it from over here in my kitchen. You have these, these things, but they don't know how to get to that point to solve all those problems. So they need somebody who's a problem solver. And then, so as far as furniture makers, you have kind of a similar spectrum where you have some furniture designers and makers who are very tightly focused in their aesthetic. They make furniture that is their furniture in this one style, whether it's their own created style or whether they do, beautifully carved reproductions of 1800 highboys or something really specific like that. And they don't deviate from that. So if you're going to them, you're going to be getting their product. And then on the other end of the spectrum is people who have a ton of skills and just love making things, and they don't care what the aesthetics are. I mean, they care that the aesthetics are good, hopefully, but they aren't trying to put their mark on things. They're trying to create something exactly right for whoever they're working with. And I mean, the reason I bring this up about spectrums is that in that first meeting, you're going to kind of find out, well, where you are on the spectrum and where the person you're working with is. And there are great furniture clients out there, and there are amazing furniture designers that should never be in the same room with each other, because if they're both on that really tightly controlled end of that spectrum, which there's just not a lot on the extreme ends of those spectrums, but it's just, there can be a lot of problems if you have two people who have very strong visions and they aren't in sync with each other. And so in that first meeting, you're going to bring all the information that you have, whatever it is, what you need something to be, what you want it to do, aesthetic things. If you have pictures of other things that you're like, I kind of like this, I kind of like this, or you have pictures of the stuff that you already own that's going to be around, because that's important too, that everything marries with itself nicely. you're going to bring that there and lay it out to them. And there's a few ways that, I mean, there's a million ways that that first meeting can go. It can go where you're both sitting there and you have a piece of paper between you and you're both drawing on it and you're adding details and you're like bouncing off each other, and you have, by the end of it, in 15 minutes, you're like, oh my God, this is the piece, I've done it, it's going to be great. Or you might go there with all of your information and the furniture maker will kind of be more reserved and ask questions and write things down and not give you a lot of information, but say in a couple days, I'm gonna send you a sketch. And then a couple days later, you get exactly what you were hoping for, or not. You know, I mean, it doesn't always work out, but the meeting can go either way. The thing that is important about that meeting is to look out for a couple of red flags. The first one, which is much less difficult to overcome, is the red flag of somebody not understanding you. You're giving them, communicating the information you have about what you want, and what you're getting back from them doesn't make sense to you. And it might be because they don't, there's just something going wrong in how you're, communicating something. And not to say that there aren't extremely thick, dumb furniture designers out there. Usually, a problem of understanding can be solved as long as you just keep at it. The more serious red flag would be somebody who is not listening to what you're trying to tell them, who is hearing what you're saying and knows what you want, but is telling you what they want to make for you, which that's just not cool. But no matter what, totally lost my train of thought. I've never done this seminar before, by the way. I don't know what I'm doing, but I have some notes, so I'm going to go to them. Thank you very much. Well, after that first meeting, you have the meeting and you think you have a plan, or you get that sketch. After that first meeting, it's hard to know what to expect. What should happen if you're like, I like this person, I want them to build me something. They should be sending you a bid. They should be sending you a contract, or not a contract, a bid that is in writing, and that's really important so that everything is pretty clearly stated. And I mean, you're at a home improvement show. There's contractors everywhere, and they oftentimes have very clear legal language in their quotes. A lot of furniture designers and makers aren't at that level of sophistication for their legal language in their contracts. So you want to make sure that in the bid it talks about what the piece is, what its purpose is, the aesthetics that you've talked about, and what the price is going to be. And that's a big one, because sticker shock is definitely an issue with having custom furniture made, because we're used to an IKEA level or a Restoration Hardware level of pricing, which you're like, oh, those are two ends of a spectrum. IKEA is very cheap and Restoration Hardware is very expensive, and a custom piece can, depending on its complexity, be anywhere in that range to way above that range. So you just have to be prepared for that. But that's generally about the quality that you're going to get when you actually have that piece made.
I'm just curious, how did you get into this furniture?
I was an actor, of course. No, I was in New York acting for a long time, and I had a day job making display for retail spaces like Madison Avenue and Fifth Avenue. We would build, every 6 weeks they switch out their windows, and we would build that, and that was in a custom shop in Manhattan. And there's a lot of people who don't like to leave the island of Manhattan for anything, so they would come to our shop and ask us to build them custom furniture, and nobody else in the shop wanted to touch it, so I pretended I knew what I was doing until I knew what I was doing, kind of. Yeah, so that's where I'm coming from on it. And yeah, and it's way better than
How do
acting.
you learn that kind of craft nowadays too? It's tough.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and that's you know, a lot of the people in Guerilla by Design are MCAD graduates with furniture design degrees, and they have a pretty good craft building side of that program. So they come out with at least the skills to be able to put things together. And then a lot of them will come and do internships. I work at a place called Willy Willette Works, and we do custom furniture, and we have interns come from MCAD, and then they learn how to actually make things sometimes. So I mean, if you actually agree to have a piece made, you know, you're like, okay, we're going to do it. A part of the price on the bid should usually be, you know, whether, you know, what the terms of the payment are, whether it's going to be, you know, all the money when it's delivered, or whether it's going to be 50% down and then 50% when it's delivered, which is a lot of the case just a practical thing, because, you know, maybe that person needs that money down to cover the materials that come, because material cost is so high in a lot of these projects. Once you've actually, you know, paid that 50% down, it's important to know what to expect. You know, what the furniture maker can expect from you when the actual piece is being built, and what you can expect from them. And I think in both cases, availability is probably the most important thing. If you're working on a piece, there's that jewelry armoire right there. When I was working on that, I had a question I needed answered about, there's some knobs I turned for hanging her necklaces, and I didn't know how long her necklaces were, you know, and it was kind of a simple thing, but it was something that we hadn't talked about before. And I left her messages and sent her emails, and about 2 weeks went by, and I had not heard an answer about this, and I was at a point where like that was like the last step before I could start finishing it, and it held everything up, and I mean, it was to the point where I kind of was worried that she was dead. But it's that kind of thing where like it was just such a simple question, and getting that information would have allowed the project to move forward. And on the other end, I mean, I think if you've had a piece commissioned, it's right that you can ask that they keep you updated on how things are going. You know, whether that's through, you know, photographs or phone calls or anything. And I think photographs through a process are pretty important, because if there's details that you know, maybe, you know, if I had continued on and just, you know, decided that she has a bunch of, you know, really short necklaces, and I had sent her a process shot of that, she might have been able to catch that and be like, oh, I see that you put those knobs in that. Is it going to be a problem? And it's just really important that communication be happening all throughout the process, so that when the piece arrives, there isn't something that needs to be redone or, you know, undone that would have been a lot easier to catch before. After you actually get the piece, it's interesting because you know, you're not buying it from a store, so there isn't usually an actual warranty of any kind, but there is, I think, a little nebulous, but kind of an unwritten warranty where the person is standing behind their work. And maybe it is, you know, there are definitely people that you can work with that will have an actual contract with terms laid out where, like, you know, if anything of this nature goes wrong, then I'll take care of it. But, you know, if you have a table and, you know, 3 weeks later one of the legs is all wobbly, that you have every right to expect that that's going to be fixed. You know, I mean, if it's 3 years down the line and it's, you know, some chips in the veneer, then that, you know, that might be a different story. But I just finished the piece that I have in the show is a collapsible dining table, and that's actually one of two. The other one I actually built for a client who eats on his porch but doesn't have the room to leave the table up all the time, and so he wanted this table, and about 2 weeks after I had delivered it and, you know, everything was fine, he was like, can you make it an inch shorter? And it was a little bit heartbreaking because, you know, I mean, it wasn't a problem of communication. You know, we had talked about the height. He had chairs that had these arms that swooped up, and he was worried about them being able to fit far enough underneath the table for him to be comfortable eating. But then when he actually got the piece, he realized that he felt like a little kid a little bit, you know, having to have his elbows up here while he was eating. And so he felt like, you know, I had done what he had asked, and so he, you know, but it just wasn't working. And I felt like I hadn't done my job because because it should have been something that we had figured out much earlier in the process. So we had, he was like, I want to pay you for this work, and I was like, I feel like I should just do it. And we were both coming to it with the right attitude that, you know, we made up an hourly wage for me fixing it. And then I told him it took a lot less time than it actually did. And then we both got to walk away from it feeling good, you know, as opposed to it turning into something ugly. And I think that is, out of anything, I think that is the coolest part about working with an actual furniture maker and having something built, is that when you have the right two people in that situation, it isn't a customer client, you know, isn't a customer relationship. The furniture maker is trying to build something to help complete a person's life. I mean, that's saying it in kind of a big way, but it's you know, this person needs something, and I'm able to help them have this thing that they want so badly. And then the person who's having it built, they get to kind of feel like a patron. I mean, and not like a Renaissance style, like build me some sculptures, but you know, I get to do exactly what I want to do because that person has asked me to make this thing. So both people are getting something good out of this relationship, and that's it. That's why you should buy furniture from people. I don't know. If you guys have any questions, I'm totally happy to answer them. Otherwise,
Do you get attached to some pieces that you make?
oh yeah, yeah. And there's other pieces that I just never want to see again. Yeah. All right. Thank you guys for coming. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Do you have people that do the full spectrum from contemporary to traditional?
Yeah. There's some traditional things that I think are best left to like very expert. I mean, carving. You know, having things that are extremely ornately carved. That is probably not something you want somebody to be reinventing the wheel on. But as far as building furniture in all those different styles, you know, it's all just putting pieces together. So that oftentimes there are people who can work in anything, you know, from a very traditional, you know, maybe a shaker style, all the way to some crazy curvy metal bases. Oh, it's in the gallery right around the corner. Yep, right around the corner, and there's each section of it was put together by a different interior designer, or in our case, a bunch of furniture designers pretending to be interior designers for a minute.